Imagine a man who possesses everything the modern world tells us we should want. He has absolute power over the known world, enough wealth to dwarf any modern billionaire, and the command of a war machine that has never known a true equal. This is Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor. But behind the purple robes and the marble statues, he was likely the most pressured human being alive. While we lose sleep over a passive-aggressive email from a manager or a 2-hour delay in gridlock traffic, Aurelius was waking up to a reality where the Antonine Plague was decimating his population, his borders were collapsing under the weight of Germanic invasions, and his own trusted generals were plotting his assassination. He didn't have the luxury of checking out or taking a mental health day. If he broke, the Western world broke with him. This brings us to a shocking thesis. The Roman emperors, specifically the Stoic practitioners like Aurelius, didn't try to manage stress through relaxation or elimination. They didn't think stress was a bug in the system. They saw it as the system itself. They developed a rigorous mental framework that allowed them to remain indifferent to the chaos of the world. Today, we aren't just looking at history. We are decoding the ancient psychological armor that kept the master of the world sane and how you can wear it too. The modern trap, the myth of hyper-control. We live in a golden age of optimization. We have apps to track our sleep, calendars synced across 3 devices, and algorithms that predict what we want to eat before we even feel hungry. This technological marvel has birthed a dangerous psychological byproduct, the illusion of hyper-control. In the 21st century, we have been sold the lie that if we just work a little harder, optimize our morning routine a bit more, or buy the right productivity software, we can bend the world to our will. We view life as a series of inputs and outputs. If the output is a delayed flight, a crashing stock market, or a misinterpreted text message, we feel a sense of personal failure. We treat the environment as something that should be under our thumb. This is the modern trap. We have expanded our sense of responsibility to include things that are mathematically impossible to govern. When the world inevitably refuses to cooperate with our carefully curated plans, we don't just feel disappointed, we feel attacked. The physiological toll, decision fatigue, and cortisol. Overload. This constant striving for control isn't just a philosophical error, it's a biological catastrophe. Because we've blurred the line between what we can influence and what we cannot, our brains stay in a state of high alert. Cortisol. Overload. Evolutionarily, the stress response was designed to save us from tigers. It was a short, sharp burst of energy meant for survival. Today, because we treat a low battery notification or a looming deadline with the same existential dread as a predator, our bodies are marinating in cortisol. We are living in a permanent state of survival mode, which leads to chronic inflammation, weakened immunity, and mental burnout. Decision fatigue. Every day, we are bombarded with thousands of micro-decisions. Because we feel we must control the outcome of every single one, our willpower tank is empty by noon. This is why you can lead a boardroom meeting at 10 a.m. but find yourself unable to decide what to have for dinner at 6 p.m. We have forgotten the ancient boundary between the inner world and the outer world. We treat every minor inconvenience as a glitch in a world we are supposed to be running. This makes us fragile. When you try to control everything, you end up being controlled by everything. The Roman insight. The wall between pressure and stress. The Romans, particularly the Stoics who advised and became emperors, looked at this chaos with a different lens. They lived in a world of extreme volatility, where a sudden fever could kill your children, or a political shift could lead to your execution. They didn't have the luxury of believing they were in control of their environment. They made a vital distinction that we have lost: external pressure versus internal stress. 1. External pressure is the weight of the world. It is the war at the border, the plague in the streets, or in your case the boss yelling or the bank account dwindling. The Romans viewed these as indifferents. They are facts of life. They are inevitable. 2. Internal stress, however, is the emotional reaction we choose to attach to that pressure. To a Roman emperor, a crisis was like a storm. You cannot stop the rain, external pressure, but you are a fool if you are angry at the clouds for being cloudy. The stress doesn't come from the rain. It comes from your belief that it shouldn't be raining. The Roman insight is a hard pill to swallow. The world doesn't owe you a smooth path. By trying to control the path, you lose control of yourself. The secret they knew, that we've forgotten, is that while you can never fully control your environment, You have absolute sovereignty over your interpretation of it. The architect's tools, building the inner citadel. If the problem is our addiction to control, the solution is a radical psychological restructuring. The Roman emperors didn't just think positive, they used a specific set of mental technologies to harden their minds against the chaos of an unpredictable empire. These three tools, the dichotomy of control, the premortem, and the view from above, form the blueprint of the inner citadel, the dichotomy of control sorting the chaos. This is the foundational stone of Stoic practice. Epictetus, the former slave who became a teacher to the Roman elite, began his handbook with a simple premise. Some things are up to us, and some things are not up to us. In our modern world, we bleed energy because we fail to sort our concerns into these two piles. We spend hours ruminating on the external, the opinions of our peers, the volatility of the economy, the traffic on the bridge, or the mistakes we made yesterday. To a Roman emperor, the value of these things was effectively zero. Why? Because you can influence them, but you cannot determine them. If you tie your happiness to an outcome you don't control, you are a hostage to fortune. On the other side is the internal, your intentions, your current actions, and your chosen perspective. This is where the emperor's power lies. Its value is everything. The shift. Instead of saying, I must get this promotion, external, the Stoic says, I will prepare for this interview to the absolute best of my ability, internal. The result. If they don't get the job, their internal goal was still achieved. The failure exists in the world, but not in their mind. They remain unshakable because their win was the effort, not the result. Premortem, premeditatio malorum, the power of pessimism. Modern self-help often preaches the law of attraction, or positive visualization, the idea that if you only imagine success, you will achieve it. The Romans thought this was dangerously naive. They knew that the man who only imagines sunshine is the one who drowns when the storm hits. Instead, they practiced premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. Every morning, Marcus Aurelius would sit in the quiet of his tent and systematically imagine everything that could go wrong. He would tell himself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. This sounds grim, but it is actually a profound stress reduction technique. 1. Eliminating shock. Stress is intensified by the element of surprise. By mentally rehearsing a crisis, a lost shipment, a betrayal, a failed harvest, you have already lived through it. When it happens in reality, it is no longer a tragedy. It is simply a scenario you've already practiced. 2. Emotional immunity. By pre-feeling the frustration of a difficult day, the actual event loses its sting. You have already processed the cortisol hit in a controlled environment. You aren't reacting, you're executing a pre-planned response. The view from above. The perspective of the stars. The final tool is a meditative exercise designed to crush the ego's tendency to catastrophize. When we are stressed, our vision narrows. Our problem, a missed deadline or a broken appliance, fills our entire field of vision until it becomes the center of the universe. The emperors practiced the view from above to restore balance. The zoom out. Imagine rising above your desk. You see yourself hunched over a glowing screen. The expansion. Zoom out further. You see your city, a hive of millions of people, each with their own catastrophic problems. The cosmic scale. Zoom out until the Earth is a pale blue dot, and human history is a blink of an eye in the life of a star. From this height, your massive problem becomes invisible. This isn't about making your life feel meaningless. It's about making your stress feel proportionate. Most of what we worry about is small stuff that won't matter in 5 years, let alone 5 centuries. The view from above allows you to stop being the protagonist of a tragedy and start being an observer of reality. By combining these tools, the Romans didn't just survive their stress. They used it as the raw material for their character. The discarded chain, the moment of absolute sovereignty. We have explored the tools, the history, and the physiological traps of the modern world, but now we reach the summit, the single, world-altering realization that transforms a person from a victim of circumstance into a master of their own soul. This is the climax of the Stoic journey, the moment where the weight of the Roman Empire meets the piercing clarity of a single human mind. The realization, Stress is a narrative. For most of us, stress feels like a physical object. We talk about carrying stress or being under pressure, as if it were a heavy stone dropped onto our shoulders by our boss, our spouse, or our bank account. We believe that if the stone were removed, the stress would vanish. But the Roman emperors discovered a radical truth. The stone doesn't exist. Stress is not an external event. It is the story you tell yourself about that event. When your car breaks down, the event is simply a mechanical failure of metal and plastic. The stress is the narrative you wrap around it. This shouldn't be happening. I'm going to be late. I can't afford this. My luck is always terrible. The event is objective. The suffering is subjective. The climax of this realization occurs when you stop trying to fix the car to fix your mood, and instead realize that your mood was never tied to the car in the first place. You realize that there is a microscopic gap between a stimulus, what happens, and your response, how you feel. In that gap lies your entire freedom. The Emperor's Journal, I discarded it. The most powerful articulation of this moment was never meant for the public. It was scribbled by Marcus Aurelius in his private diary, known today as the Meditations. At the height of a crisis, likely surrounded by the death and chaos of the plague, he wrote a line that should be etched into every modern smartphone. Today I escaped anxiety. Or no, I discarded it, because it was within me, in my own perceptions, not outside. Notice the correction he makes. He starts by saying he escaped it, as if he ran away from a monster. But he stops himself. He realizes escaping implies the monster is still out there chasing him, so he changes the word to discarded. To discard something is to realize it has no value. You don't escape a piece of trash. You drop it because you realize you don't need to carry it. Aurelius realized that his anxiety wasn't out there, in the barbarian camps or the plague-ridden streets. It was an internal construct. If he created it, he could uncreate it. He didn't wait for the war to end to feel peace. He dropped the anxiety while the war was still raging. The shift from victim to architect. This is the ultimate key moment. It is the shift from being a victim of the schedule to being the architect of the reaction. When you are a victim, your internal state is a mirror of your external environment. If the world is chaotic, you are chaotic. If people are mean, you are hurt. You are a puppet and stress is the hand pulling your strings. But when you adopt the Roman mindset, you become the architect. You realize that power isn't the ability to command legions or move markets. True power, the kind that an emperor would envy, is the ability to look at a catastrophe and say, "This is difficult, but it is not harmful to my character unless I allow it to be." The climax of this philosophy is the understanding that you are the gatekeeper of your own mind. No one can force you to feel stressed without your consent. You might be tired, you might be busy, and you might be facing immense challenges, but the feeling of being overwhelmed is a judgment you're making. The person in the mirror. Marcus Aurelius sat atop the greatest hierarchy in human history, yet he spent his nights writing about how to control his own temper and his own thoughts. Why? Because he knew that if he could control the person in the mirror, the empire would take care of itself. The key moment for you is this. Stop looking at your to-do list as the source of your problems. Your to-do list is just a list of tasks. The stress is your resistance to those tasks. The moment you stop resisting reality and start accepting it as the raw material of your day, the chains of stress fall away. You haven't changed your life, you've changed the person living it. The legacy of the Roman emperors teaches us one final transformative truth. Stress is an internal signal, not an external fact. We spend our lives trying to fix the world so that we can finally feel at peace. But the Stoics realized that the world is inherently unfixable. It will always be chaotic, unpredictable, and often unfair. If your tranquility depends on a smooth day, you will be a lifelong prisoner of chance. By practicing the dichotomy of control, you stop leaking energy into things that don't belong to you. By using negative visualization, you strip the future of its power to shock you. Together, these practices build what Marcus Aurelius called the inner citadel. This is a mental fortress, a sanctuary of logic and perspective that no demanding boss, grueling traffic jam, or global crisis can breach. The walls of this citadel are built from your judgments, and as long as you refuse to label external events as evil or unbearable, the fortress holds. As we close this chapter on ancient wisdom, remember this final thought. You don't need a crown to think like an emperor. Marcus Aurelius wasn't great because he ruled Rome. He was great because he ruled himself while Rome was falling apart. You have the exact same equipment he had, the power of reason and the freedom of choice. You don't need to change your job, your city, or your bank account to find relief. You simply need to reclaim your role as the gatekeeper of your own mind. Now it's time to move from theory to practice. I want you to look at your calendar for tomorrow. Pick one thing, one meeting, one chore, or one interaction that usually stresses you out. Right now, decide that its outcome is external and your reaction is internal. Comment below with the one external stressor you are choosing to discard today. Let's build a community of modern citadels. If you found this ancient perspective helpful, hit the like button and subscribe to join us as we continue to mine history for the tools to master the modern world.